Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good morning and welcome to our series of podcasts on subjects which are of current interest and which need a lot more study, a lot more attention from all of us here. We are going to discuss Bangladesh today, and I think it's pretty obvious why we are discussing it. It is not in the best of shape. There have been tensions along the borders. There's been violence inside it. And I have with me two, Dr. Smruti Pattanaik and Sanjiv Krishan Sood, both extremely competent to talk on the subject because they've spent, like Dr. Pattanaik, I think has spent more time in Bangladesh than in India. She has taught in Dhaka University, she's taught in universities in Sydney, in Australia, and she is more conversant, very well conversant with what's going on in Bangladesh. And Mr. Sanjiv Krishan Sood is from the Border Security Forces, and I can't think of anybody better who can talk on the subject of the recent border tensions between India and India and Bangladesh. So let's go into this directly. The fact is, when you look at it overall, there are two distinct lines of activity. One is where the student leaders are they're extreme in their statements. They're talking of very, very anti-India. They're talking of even things which, in my view, is anti-Bangladesh, because you had Hasnat Abdullah recently saying we will break the pens of anyone who writes against us. That is hardly the most democratic statement to make. But you also have the officials like the army chief, in fact, who's been very mature in his handling of this whole situation. You had recently the home minister saying that India is very important to Bangladesh. He also said China is important to Bangladesh. And you have, so there is an effort. He said the border situation is now stable, so there's no more tension. So it seems that there are two lines of activity. One which is looking for stability, some stability, and the other which is on the absolute extreme. So which do you think, which line of activity do you think is likely to be carry on in the future? I mean, which direction is this going? Shruti, if you could perhaps start with
I will say that, as you said very rightly, there are hardliners and there are people who are pragmatic about the bilateral relations with India. I'll give an example. You give the example of the army chief giving statements, and because obviously you don't expect the same kind of statements from the student. And all of us, we know that this particular movement, which they say Gana Andolon, is something which was spearheaded by the student, but later other people from other political parties also joined in. So this particular government is anti-Hasina, and there is a belief that India was supporting Hasina, so therefore you also see a lot of anti-India statement that is coming out. But also at the same time, this particular regime is supposed to be different than Hasina's regime. It was supposed to be democratic, at least usher in the democracy. We have seen yesterday the Constitution Reform Commission submitted, a report. So we'll see how that also proceeds forward. But also, having said that, some of the student leaders, the kind of statement they have made, the kind of you see a lot of media campaign that goes against India. So I would say in long term, if you look at the geography, Bangladesh is surrounded by India on all the three sides. It has a small border, a comparatively small border with Myanmar and then the Bay of Bengal. Similarly, India's northeast also, if you look at the geography, Bangladesh is surrounded by India on all the three sides. It has a small border, a comparatively small border with Myanmar and then the Bay of Bengal. Similarly, India's northeast also is, if you look at the map, also Bangladesh is a very significant neighbor. And so therefore I would say in long term, because this is, as all of us we know, is an interim government, so obviously this is a transitional government which will hold the election eventually. So in that sense, I would rather have more faith in what the army chief said, because he was looking at a very long term, what will be the relationship with India. So I will go the dictation of geography, the fact that historically we have very close ties, and the fact that we have lived together, have a lot of non-traditional security issues between the two countries, drug trafficking, and arms and ammunition and all. So therefore, I would say that it looks like that India and Bangladesh relations will endure, and these are, I will consider, are minor hiccups, and we must understand that and proceed forward.
The thing is, even in the official, in the narrative, there is some suspicion in terms of whether there's a certain amount of double dealing. Like the Home Minister, who was earlier Lieutenant General and heading the border services, during his tenure, the India border was at in a very unstable state. So what is his actual position? Because even he's not actually Home Minister, he's an interim leader. He has also made anti-India statements. Then there's the fact that there is, do you see this as something they have to do, to say anti-India stuff so that they'll have a role in a future government? Is that what the student leaders and the official leaders are going towards?
See, the entire situation is anti-Hasina and anti-India, and because there is this perception that is dominated by the Islamists and using a generic terminology. But like the current Home Affairs Advisor, he was, as you rightly pointed out, was heading the BDR of that point of time, now it is BGB. He in fact had taken a hardline at that point of time. If you remember, between 2001 to 2006, we had a government in Bangladesh headed by the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. We saw the 10 truckloads of arms landing in Bangladesh. There was countrywide bomb blast in 2005, followed by suicide attacks, and also it was a security nightmare as far as India is concerned. But since the BNP government was there, like we have seen in the context of Bangladesh, any political party that comes to power always appoints a person who is ideologically closer to it. So I'm not surprised by the kind of statement which General Jahangir Alam Chaudhary has given, because obviously he comes from that particular school, especially when the BNP was in power. So it also could be to playing into the same kind of gallery, because the student leaders are very anti-India. So it also could be that you're catering to a particular kind of politics in Bangladesh, which appears to be the dominant politics in Bangladesh in terms of its international relations, appears to be very anti-India, pro-US, pro-China, and pro-Pakistan, which, if you ask me, makes me, takes me back to 1975, the post Mujibur Rahman situation, where there was an effort to move away from the Indo-centric foreign policy to those kind, it had close relationship with all the three countries. So I'm not, to me, sometimes it appears, is it the post-75?
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation, that even at that point of time they were. If I can come to you on this, since we were talking about this whole border issue, you was an earlier DG. How do you see the border situation now? Because it was pretty bad. There was this whole talk of fencing and all this trouble going on, and each one calling the other person's, High Commissioner.
See, as far as my information goes, the situation along the border generally is normal, as was before the 5th of August incident. The present problem has arisen because BSF was trying to, in fact CPWD constructs it, BSF provides security, was trying to construct a fence within the 150 yards of the border. There's a border guidelines for which mandates that any defense related structure cannot be constructed within 150 yards of the fence. So in this case, we were trying to construct that fence within say about 50 yards of the fence. This was after having taken Bangladesh border guards into confidence.
Oh, so it was perfectly legitimate.
It was perfectly legitimate. And my information is that it was the villagers who were more aggressive in trying to stop that fencing work, because it stops their smuggling activities. And that area where this fence was being undertaken in Malda sector is prone to smuggling of FIC and fake Indian national currency. So that is why they were very angry, and then the Indian villagers came to support, and at other place, probably Mechliganj or somewhere, BGB also has come forward to sort of try and stop BSF from constructing the fence. So, but then they have been resolved, the issues have been resolved. Things had reached that stage that the high commissioners had to be called. I don't know whether the situation warranted that or not, but probably the commanders at local level had already, as per my information, had already resolved this. But probably this is to preempt any future interference by BGB, that the high commissioners have been called and told to restrain respective border guarding forces from interfering in the fencing work.
So essentially, it was more sort of a thrust towards keeping smuggling alive rather
Yes.
than anything else. So
See, opposition to fencing is mainly from the smugglers.
okay. So what kind of smuggling do you see other than FICN? You see
FICN is
narcotics?
there, and then lot of cattle goes from
yeah.
here to Bangladesh. So
It comes
that-
from Punjab, I hear, all
yeah,
the way
Punjab,
from.
Rajasthan, Haryana, all the way, and goes across. Although in last 3-4 years, the quantum of cattle smuggling has reduced drastically. Whatever may be the reason, one of the reason is said to be that Bangladesh has started its own cattle rearing industry, because their economy is dependent on Indian cattle, leather and meat. So one of the reasons is that, but then it has reduced drastically. So cattle goes, and then there is another thing called fancy dill, which is a cough syrup, and alcohol being banned in Bangladesh, it is used as a replacement for alcohol. So a lot of it goes from India to that place.
These are the irritants between
Irritants, yes.
India and Bangladesh. But what are the main reasons we cooperate in? I mean, I think we are the second largest trading partner. China has overtaken us, and in that is a little concerning. But in which areas would you say India and Bangladesh are well, sort of codependent?
I would say that in terms of the trade, as you were mentioning, $14 billion is Bangladesh's import from India. And if you look at the structure of this trade, a majority of them also is basically cotton yarn, which is being imported from India to Bangladesh, which actually contributes to the ready-made garment
Which is
sector
their
in
biggest
Bangladesh,
export.
Which is the biggest export. So many of the time that is one of, though it's very politically sensitive when when people look at the trade figure, in spite of same kind of trade balance which China also has, but China always says that we are going to address it, which India, we don't give so many statements saying that we're going to address, but I know that at least two of the issues that are being addressed, one is the congestion in the border, which actually some of the time sees the trucks lining up on both the sides and loading and unloading takes time. Then the lab examination of some of the perishable goods, like for example it goes to Calcutta, but there is a consideration, but perhaps they need to have it something closer to the border. Like for example, if hillside is coming, if you want to see the freshness of it, you can't send it to Calcutta and have the report. And of course, a lot of digitization also has taken place in terms of the border trade. But having said that, essential goods, like for example, onion, which maximum of the onion and potato I saw going through the Rajshahi border, coming from Bombay and other places. And
So you
there are
need a
also food
smoother
items.
kind of
Yes,
transition.
Yes, yes.
But
And in spite of the tension between the two countries, I would say that much of the tension is also social media generated. We saw the trade flowing. There has not been any obstruction or any attempt to stop the trade, and that is where you see that we opened this. I think one of the facility in the border for trade by our Home Minister. I'm just exactly forgetting what it was. But the trade continues. It's a kind of interdependent interdependent kind of relationship. For example, Sutsa was speaking of the border guarding. You also have this coordinated border patrol in some of the areas, and this particular area where the coordinated patrol will happen is chosen in consultation between the two forces, the BGB and the BSF. They decide that okay, which area they need to have this joint kind of thing. So that actually becomes one of the points where the two can coordinate. Second is the DC level meeting, DC SP, the police commissioner, the district commissioner, the border district. There is a lot of cooperation because both the countries want to curtail the cross-border crime. It's not just smuggling, but also there are, like for example, Sutsa was speaking of fentanyl, Java tablets, then you also have, for example, weapons and other things also which is going on. Bangladesh can be a kind of transit for some of the weapons. You saw what is happening also in Myanmar. So therefore, I would say that there are plethora of issues where the two countries can
have to cooperate.
They have to cooperate. There is no other. It's not like as a human being, if you don't like your neighbor, you can shift out of the place. But countries can't shift out. You have to be there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that connection, I was just wondering, like you were saying, they're kind of moving towards Pakistan, and we've seen the first shipment, which has arrived in Pakistan. Recently, we just saw this top Bangladesh General, Lieutenant General S.M. Kamarul Hassan, Principal Staff Officer of the Armed Forces Division of Bangladesh, who is, of course, the second in command. He's landed up in Pakistan with a delegation. So it seems to me that this codependency doesn't seem to, affect their actual relations very much. They're still reaching out to Pakistan, who was responsible for the genocide in their country. I mean, how can you do something like that? I mean, it's like going backwards in time.
I think the entire debate currently in Bangladesh is also, against what happened in 71. You saw the dismantling of Mujib's statue, because the argument the student leaders have given that you have to dismantle because this was politically weaponized by Awami League and taking the entire this thing of the freedom struggle that only Awami League played a kind of role.
No, but that whole thing, I mean, this is the most question which is sort of across India is, did Pakistan play a role in fomenting that kind of through the Jamaat-e-Islami? The Jamaat-e-Islami is all over. They are, in fact, I even saw a statement from the Jamaatis where they've talked to the the ambassador of China and saying, please help us with the Rohingya situation, and they've promised to help, which is an area where we have fallen short, incidentally.
But Chinese help has not really seen repatriation of the Rohingyas. China, signed that 3-state kind of verification where the Rohingyas can be repatriated. Because the Rohingyas are saying, unless and until the citizenship issue within Myanmar is resolved, there is no point of us returning then coming back. So that has not been a successful kind of thing. Obviously, they will speak to China, so it is very natural. And obviously, when your relationship is not going so well with India and you are trying to target India because Sheikh Hasina is here, or India is considered close to Sheikh Hasina, for targeting India, then your fallback option automatically is Pakistan and China. Now, if this revolution, many people believe that the US also played a role, which US has already denied. So some of the time I also say, okay, if Chinese are in, then Americans cannot be in at the same time. So one really do not know, but it could also be possible, because this is a kind of geopolitical chessboard. You really do not know who is moving where. And as far as your question regarding this particular visit, the head of the Armed Forces Division, which actually functions under the Prime Minister, but currently probably it functions under, I'm not very sure whether Chief Advisor, because in this kind of transitional government, the armed force comes under the President of Bangladesh. So therefore, I think it is a kind of, when Sheikh Hasina was in power, there was no contact with Pakistan. So obviously there is, the Bangladesh also wants to show that they are not, having a kind of policy which is very much beholden to India. So therefore they are signaling that we can be close to Pakistan. But let's see how long this works, because after all, Pakistan is not ready to tender an apology to what happened in 1971, a major demand of Bangladesh.
They've also opened up visas for Pakistanis.
Without
So it's
any
a
security
series of
clearance.
actions. Yeah.
Without any security clearance. That is what the
Yeah,
concern is
yeah.
not that the Pakistanis can come to Bangladesh, because they can allow, anybody can come to Bangladesh, the government allows that. But without a security clearance actually is a kind of will pose security challenges to us, because we have seen how at one point of time Bangladesh was used against India 2001 to 2006. I always come back because that is very much recent past. So, Sood will say, because he was in BSF at that point of time, the kind of challenges he faced at that point of time.
The terrorist camps, those were in Bangladesh. They used to launch terrorists for activities in the northeast of India. So that is one threat which emanates from their increasing interaction with Pakistan.
Yeah, but is there like any current link to, say, Manipur, for instance, say weapons coming in?
Not through Bangladesh.
No, okay.
And insofar as I know, most of the weapons going around in Manipur belong to the Manipur rifles, which have been looted. Hardly any weapon could have come from Myanmar.
But there was a recent Facebook post where they claimed who was that who claimed the entire northeast, saying
Kuldeep
this is
Singh,
part.
the advisor there.
Yes.
So but then that is, later on they retracted this. They also said that 900 terrorists are waiting to come into Manipur, which was retracted the next day. So most of the weapons in Manipur are from the Manipur local sources. Some of them may have come from China via Manipur, but not from Bangladesh. So
but it's still an area which they could potentially create a problem.
So in the context of India, having a friendly Bangladesh is important because of the situation we face in the northeast. Narrow corridor, Bangladesh coordinating with China. If the corridor gets cut off, our northeast is gone. And then those connectivity problems, trade, the essential commodities going to northeast. So all those things are important for us in order to, therefore we must have good relations with Bangladesh, whichever regime is there.
And I think that has been our policy so
Yes.
far. That you deal with whoever is there.
Yeah.
And I think that accusation that we lean only towards Hasina is quite incorrect.
Yeah, I completely agree. To add to what Susa was saying, I think it's a question of radicalism. Because if you remember the Bardhaman blast, when Sheikh Hasina came to power and took action against the domestic radicals, and because of, it's a very porous border. So, some of these groups also came and operated out of like India, the Bardhaman. That is where, if by chance that blast happened, that is how they got to know the JNB has certain linkages on this side. So that actually is a major concern, because if there is instability within Bangladesh, then obviously, like for example, we have problem in Manipur, but Bangladesh is also having problem in the Chittagong Hill Tract area, especially the Arakan army. Which almost is infiltrating and using in some of the places they're also using the Rohingyas, especially the RSOs. Not exactly the RSO is not yet revived, but they're using some of these refugees, and Bangladesh army is not very comfortable as far as the Myanmar border is concerned. They're equally apprehensive if the Arakan army expands oppression, and they also have Rohingyas on this side. So because they're also recruiting Rohingya, like army in Myanmar, they are also recruiting the Rohingyas from the Rakhine state. So, any kind of instability there also will have a spillover effect. And similarly, as Sutsa was saying, that if it is Manipur, then Manipur, Mizoram borders, Bangladesh. Yes. So, it's not that a conflict in India will not affect them, or a conflict in Bangladesh will not affect us. The border should tell you that why it is in fact pertinent that the two countries have to cooperate. I think it's a compulsion. It's not a choice.
That's,
that
I
will
think, an
cooperate
important
on.
point,
Yes.
that you have no choice
Yes.
but to cooperate with each other. In this context, I just want to bring up the upcoming visit of the foreign minister to China. And his statement says that they are hoping, I mean, it's not, doesn't seem to be very, sort of a positive feeling from his side, that Bangladesh plans to request China to lower loan interest rate, extend repayment terms by 30 years, and waive commitment fees to bolster economic cooperation. That was Tawhid Hussein's statement. Now, I don't, given China's present situation, do you think that will happen? That is one question. And second is, in terms of, I think about the figure which I've got is 70% of Bangladesh weapons procurement between 2015 and 2022 originated from China.
Yeah.
And including, of course, the base at submarine base at Pekua, which happened under Hasina.
Yeah.
Right? So, if this goes on, that is the second threat to us. So, do you see any possibility of the present disaffection being exploited by China, or do you think China will want to sort of tone down the rhetoric? Because China doesn't like this jihadi sentiment at all. But they will deal with whoever there is, they'll say it's a domestic issue and they'll deal with it. So, how do you think this will go forward?
I would say that there are certain reservations as far as India is concerned to engage the Jamaat. But a Jamaat delegation, in fact, visited China in last week of November last year. And China is willing to engage everyone, like India engages minus the Jamaat. It has throughout Sheikh Hasina's period, there was engagement between the BNP and India, and India has always been open to engage any other political parties. As I said, you have to deal with whoever comes to power, as we are dealing with the current dispensation, because that is what has thrown up after the 5th of August kind of what they say, revolution. So the Chinese base in Pekua, as you said, whether it is Army League, whether it's BNP, there is a bipartisan kind of agreement that the relationship with China is never politicized. As I was saying that China is the largest trading partner, and the trade is equally lopsided. But that is, if you speak about the trade balance with China, it really does not get connected to the people. India gets immediately connected. India is exploiting, India is treating us as a colony. There are a lot of buyers for this kind of narrative. So 70%, as you were saying, Bangladesh is the second largest importer of the Chinese weapon. It has been there. Pakistan is the largest.
If I can just interrupt you for a second, I'm sorry. The whole BRI, if we were looking at the funding, in fact, and the kind of funds which are going, Bangladesh has almost overtaken Pakistan in terms of the funds which China is giving. Because basically Pakistan funds have gone down. That is also to be realistic. But Bangladesh is a very important recipient
Actually,
of
much
that
of
aid.
the funding has not come in.
Okay.
Those are the pledges. And as you study Pakistan, you know it very well. Whenever any kind of financial crunch comes, China only extends the loan and it takes the interest. So it's the same thing, because Bangladesh for a very long time, after what happened in Sri Lanka, the Bangladesh government during Hasina, they were trying to say that, like also what is happening in Nepal, that they will look forward to the grant project, and the Chinese have not been very open about the grant project. So it is mostly, it is cautious. I think the Padma Peace, they have to make a repayment, if I'm not mistaken, within a year or so. Padma Road and Rail Bridge, which actually was completed by a Chinese engineer. Those are not actually BRI project. China claimed that it is a BRI project, to which Bangladesh objected, and the Foreign Ministry of Bangladesh gave a statement saying that it is not these are not BRI project. This is Bangladesh government funded project, and you must have seen what happened in Nepal in the Pokhara airport. The same kind of statement also came. So I don't think there will be any kind of concession as far as paying back is concerned. I'm not very sure whether, because Pakistan was in a much dire situation compared to Bangladesh, so therefore I don't see the Chinese will give them any kind of concession. Probably they will give more loan to get over the current economic crisis which is looming, as the newspaper report says, due to corruption by the previous regime. The banks were looted, so in a very bad shape economically, I would say.
Would you like to comment on the China angle?
See, Bangladesh procuring weapons from China is a given, because India can't supply them those weapons. And Chinese are known to, or rather, China is a sort of, what can one say, is an inimical neighbor to the north. And so, therefore, China would do anything to create problems as they are creating problems on the west. They would like to create problems on the east. And, taking forward the point of suspicion about India's motive, I had been to Dhaka on several occasions. On one of the occasions, the young major who was my LO, they were discussing something like procurement of tanks from China. So I said, why do you need tanks? He said, India may cut off our North Bengal portion.
Oh my goodness.
So for them, either in the civilian, whether Sheikh Hasina or Khalida Zia or army, the basic thing is anti-India sentiment has been there. So they procure weapons, modern weapons, and after all, who is their enemy? There is no India. Bangladesh is surrounded on three sides by India. So who are they going to use these weapons against?
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, so they have no visible enemy, physically visible enemy, except India as they consider it. We consider it differently. So China will, I'm sure, play its part in fomenting trouble in Bangladesh against India. It will give fuel to anti-India sentiments.
But we
Beside-
also train most of their officers here, no? I don't know if that
Limited,
includes a border
limited,
guarding.
yes,
Huh?
we train
Yeah.
them.
Ah.
We train them. Even BSF trains them. But then that is limited, very limited.
So you think we should increase that? I mean, to get over this enemy complex, what does one do?
I think there is slowly they're moving towards this blue land, red land kind of thing, because there has been a lot of engagement between the two armies after 2007 when Moinuddin Ahmad was playing a larger role in the last caretaker regime. So in that context, I would say that there is a political context to this Force 2030, which is the modernization program for Bangladesh Army, because any regime that is in power in Bangladesh always would try to please the army. The army cannot play the kind of role which the Pakistan army plays, but they are a major stakeholder as far as instability is concerned, and that is why you saw on the 5th of August in the morning when General Wakuru said that we'll stand by the nation, which is very different. We're not standing by the government. So they would not, the army will not be in a situation where they have to shoot their own, civil population. So therefore that becomes very significant. So there is, if I want to stay in power, so I have to keep the army happy, so they don't intervene, because Bangladesh.
What do you think of the rumors of divisions within the army? Do you think there's any credibility to that?
There could be some credibility, because Bangladesh army is always divided between those who are close to
Khalida,
League, those who are close to Khalida Zia, and that is one of the reasons why if you study all the coups, that was liberation warrior, repatriated soldiers. Like for example, Zia was killed in 1982, but prior to that he had to face around 22 coups within the army.
Oh my goodness.
So in a sense, that it has a history of this kind of division, and General Wakuru just had just taken over. He himself also had not met all his corps commanders. So obviously, he will act taking into account what is the opinion of his senior commanders within the army. So there could be a division. There has always been a division. In 2007-8, there was also some of the army officers who wanted the army to stay on, but General Moinuddin decided that he will not stay on. And some of them were posted. One went as ambassador to Australia. The other one was principal of the NDC. So there will be a kind of shifting, which actually army is not interested to take over directly power, because they would like a transition coming, the next government coming, which many people think that could be the BNP, because that is the major political force as far as Bangladesh is concerned.
Okay, I think with that we'll have to.
This division in army, it used to be Awami League versus BNP. But with Sheikh Hasina having been in power for so long, most of the senior officers are Awami League supporters. But then now the Jamaat factor comes in.
Yeah.
So most of them, even though they may be favored, they may have favored Sheikh Hasina, are radicalized commanders. So that is the difference now in the earlier division and the present division. So the rumors that you are talking of may or may not be true. Probably more chances are that they are true.
They are true. So we are looking at a period of lot of instability ahead, isn't it? It either internal and external, until I think you see the elections, and then they may probably settle down into a particular framework. But till then, I think we have to keep a very close eye on what's going on. So how do you see the issues in the future along the border, since we just got over a pretty but perhaps not major, but quite a serious number of incidents. How do you see this going in the future?
You see, with such a long border with Bangladesh, we need to ensure proper security along the borders. There are threats of illegal immigration. It has been happening. There was initially some pressure on the border security force, but then that has been overcome. The point is that we must ensure proper border security at all times. It often doesn't happen because the troops have withdrawn for several tasks relating to internal security, relating to elections and so on and so forth. You see, the recent elections, almost 50% of the troops were withdrawn from the eastern borders. So the border is very thinly held, and there are therefore very large chances of illegal immigration happening, infiltration happening, and people with motives coming into India and doing nefarious activities. So that must be ensured that borders are properly guarded at all points.
Particularly at least till the elections happen.
Especially during those times. See,
Yeah.
The government has to think of some alternatives, how to reduce burden on the border guarding forces and conduct the internal security and election duties properly. Some alternatives have to be seriously pondered about.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful that you could come and talk to us. So with that, we'll end this particular podcast from Claus. And thanks so much to everyone watching.
Welcome to the Claus YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.